So, namaste and welcome to this final study session today. And final one for now, at least. We will do some more as we get into 2025. This study session is a deeper dive into self-inquiry together. And really, we're going to start with a description of the self-inquiry process that was ultimately very, very effective for me. And we have looked previously at meditation. We have also looked at contemplation. And as our path increases in speed and as we begin to practice consistently, we'll find very quickly afterwards that we have this urge growing inside to find an even shorter route, an even quicker way to freedom. And that is, of course, always self-inquiry. So, self-inquiry is a process that I really did not understand at first. And that's one of the reasons it took me such a long time to recognize who I am. And in an attempt to shortcut that process here for everyone, really wanted to take some time to dive into what self-inquiry is. And the most effective way that worked for me, because self-inquiry comes in many forms, but what we're going to do today here on this session is a very direct way, a kind of inquiry that's for those that are ready to end suffering and are perhaps already mature enough, which is all of you, just maybe we don't have such a clarity on what self-inquiry really is. So I had a lot of misconceptions about self-inquiry, that it was a mental process or a thought process. And this it really slowed down my progress in recognizing who I am. But I came to see that self-inquiry is something much more direct, and it is before the mind. It is a looking and a seeing. And that if I'm thinking about my real nature, my real self, then I'm in fact perpetuating a sense of a separate self. Even if I'm thinking about the infinite consciousness, awareness, or presence, if I'm thinking about it, I'm really emphasizing the sense of being someone who's thinking about it. Only by direct seeing of who I already am, who we always are, is our sense of separation going to begin to disappear. There's only the real self. There's only the infinite consciousness. And this infinite consciousness is coming to a stage where it wants to recognize itself finally and fully and clearly. It is losing interest in playing with thoughts, in playing with the sense of separation anymore. And it is, if you're listening to these words, you're already at that point in your evolution. So if you're listening and thinking, I don't know if self-inquiry is for me, or I don't know if I'm ready for self-inquiry, or I don't know if I'm good enough, all of those things, we can begin to see that, excuse me, we must be already ready to have found our way to direct teaching like this. So we're going to take a little time to explain the self-inquiry process, and then I'll lead us all through the process as a group here together. And then we'll probably take a little break, 5 or 10 minutes break, and then I'll open it up here for questions about the self-inquiry process that we're going to do. And I'd ask that questions are on this topic only. There is an open satsang for everyone on Thursday, the last one before Christmas holiday. And there's the ability to send in questions anonymously for me to answer for other subjects. But for this session today, I'd like to keep the questions on this subject so that we can really study and come to a place where we feel more proficient. So, what is self-inquiry and how do we do it? So, self-inquiry is really inquiring into what our self actually is. So, an asking of a question, and an exploration or a discovery, a searching, a scanning, not a thought process. It's not thinking about an experience we had previously, because that is going to fortify the sense of separation. I'll feel like a someone who is remembering what I saw previously. And as we ask and experience who we really are, then every moment we spend consciously experiencing who we really are, the formless consciousness, presence, beingness, then we are simultaneously undoing, allowing this sense of a separate self to dissolve and fall away on its own. You cannot get rid of the sense of separation because it's not real. You can only bring attention away from that and onto what is real already. And this begins to fall away, this old way of thinking about ourselves. So only the direct experience, the direct seeing, actually experiencing what you are today, here, now, is going to really shift you in your awakening, because every time you look and see, firstly, that there is no separate self here in the way that we thought, that the one that is striving towards awakening or efforting towards some future goal where I'll finally feel free, that one doesn't exist. And every time we look and see, it's not there, this person. The one that feels its suffering cannot be found when we look in our inquiry. Then we're going to find it harder and harder to go back to believing thoughts. Each time we experience that we're not a person, not an object, a phenomenon. Our body is an object, a phenomenon, thoughts, emotions. But the one who's aware of them all is not something that's coming and going. It's not a form. It's not an object. What we really are is that in which all phenomena appear. So we look and see every time. We ask some simple questions and we discover again that we are not a person, not a someone who needs to awaken. And then we do come to discover that we're already that which is free. There's no process of waking up to truth for us. We are already the truth. We're just coming to see that clearer and clearer every time we look. So self-inquiry is very direct. The most effective thing I have ever found, and the fastest thing I have ever found to see that we're already free. Why do we need to do self-inquiry? Well, if we don't do self-inquiry, we're going to be believing that we are a separate someone who has to make their way over here to consciousness, to presence. I have to, I used to believe I have to find my way back to the infinite consciousness. I'm here, it's here, and I have to merge into it or dissolve myself into it. And what we're going to see with our self-inquiry is that this person here doesn't exist, never did. And that what's already here is free as the infinite consciousness itself. And every time we do this, we begin to untangle the mind of its thoughts and allow the mind to come to rest. Mostly, our mind is thinking about how to wake up to the self, how to solve our problems, how to become firmly established in and as the consciousness, the infinite self. And as we prove that this isn't our work, that this isn't where we're starting from, that we're starting already here, and that the journey that we seem to be on from someone to being consciousness is not actually true. It is part of the illusion that we all believe in for such a long time. This idea that I'm getting there, I'm getting closer, I'm getting deeper in my meditations, I'm letting go of more karmic patterns, tendencies. I'm almost there. We have to destroy that within our consciousness, the capacity to think like that, and replace it with the understanding that we are already where we're trying to get to, that we're looking from the place we thought we were trying to get to. Once that is clearly seen enough times, then we live as this freedom constantly, effortlessly. And to see it once is not usually enough. For most of us, we have a seeing of who we really are, but then we go right back to thinking in terms of being a separate self. How do I see who I am again? How do I merge into this infinite consciousness? How do I let go of my karmic patterns? How do I transcend all beliefs? All of that is impossible for you because you're already beyond those. There's no beliefs for you to transcend, only to see that you're already beyond those, that they already don't touch you. And then we have this effortless peace that comes from resting in and as what we know ourselves to be. For self-inquiry, when you begin to do it, it might seem strange at first, but as you do it more, you're going to find that you actually start to really enjoy it. Every time you look and you don't find a person, you find your own freedom that's here already. And that begins to become really joyful, blissful even, and really quite addictive in a good way. Let me remind myself again that I'm already free. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? And that the person and its problems are just a set of thoughts and emotions and sensations happening, but not a real entity like we thought. So, if this is your first time to self-inquiry, also, you might find it's a little bit shocking when you realize I'm not who I thought I was. For me, there was some fear that came up and a lot of shock. The first time I experienced that there's no person here. This person that has been the focus of my entire existence, who's been trying to make enough money and raise the kids and be liked by everybody, and now is really trying to reach awakening, really, really trying. So much belief had gone into this person. And the first time I saw that it wasn't actually there, it was very shocking. But it was also, along with some fear, a huge sense of liberation. That everything I had thought that was wrong about myself or I had to fix, and this great problem of how to awaken, was kind of swept away in that moment. And I had to keep looking because I picked all that up again, right? You might have noticed there's a habit to pick it up again. So we just keep looking and seeing and looking and seeing. So we're going to work with three very direct questions here today. And as I lead us through this, I'd like you to just try to follow along the best that you can. And if you get stuck or a little lost at any point, don't worry. You can't do this wrong. It's the willingness to ask the questions that is most important. The willingness to see I'm not at all who I thought I was. The willingness to recognize I'm already free is what's most important here. And the actual answers in self-inquiry are not so important. So if I try to find a separate person and it still seems like there is one here, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean I'm doing it wrong. It's the willingness to see, the willingness to recognize it might not be true that is most important. So 99.99% of all the work in self-inquiry is asking the questions openly and curiously. If you're willing to do that, then everything else is guaranteed. We don't have to get results here today on this session, but they will happen if we can ask with an open, honest curiosity. And that's the thing that changed for me was at some point, I was more willing to question the existence of this separate self than to keep sustaining it. I could see that sustaining it, trying to get somewhere towards awakening, wasn't really helping anyway. In fact, it was making things worse. My whole life became very screwed up and contracted. So let's begin to work with these questions now and following on the best that you can. And this is being recorded, of course, so you can go back and watch it. We'll upload it to YouTube tomorrow and you'll be able to watch it again. And the basic three questions that we're going to work with. Number one, can I find a separate person? And we'll go through this in a minute. So we're going to look together in a minute, see if we can find a someone. And then number two, if I can't find a someone, a person, what do I find when I look for myself? We are here, we do exist, but not as a person. What do we exist as? This is question two. And with this question, we begin to recognize the formless emptiness, consciousness, nothingness, pure intelligent awareness that we are. And then question three, we ask, how am I recognizing the consciousness? We have an experience we see directly, which is very important. I'm directly experiencing who I am so that it's not my truth. I'm not telling you this, that you see it for yourself. And then you begin to move away from the mind's doubts. You might never get this, mind says. You might never break through, mind says. But if we can experience it today, then we can begin to lose attraction to the mind's doubting questions. So the third question, how are we recognizing that? We're going to check it out. Am I using my senses to recognize what's real? Am I using my mind to recognize what's real? And then again, how am I recognizing it then? So we're going to go through these questions one after the other, and then we'll take a little break and we'll open it up for some feedback. Anyone who has a challenge with or got stuck somewhere, you can feel free to ask a question. But for now, just following the questions the best that you can. Asking the questions and seeing what answers arise inside yourself, seeing what answers come. And when you allow these answers to come, we're not making any effort. So we're asking these self-inquiry questions and just seeing what answers arise, as if you're watching a movie. Just ask the question and see. So you're making no effort at all to find an answer. We're also not thinking about an answer. We're just seeing what actually happens here. So let's begin. And you can do this with your eyes open or closed. Eyes open might seem less easy for some if you haven't done it before. If you do close your eyes, making sure that if you do close your eyes, that you don't drift off into a deep state. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we want to do is make sure we actually experience who we are. And if we have a little resistance sometimes, very normal. Some deep state might happen. Mind will give you this nice deep meditative state so that you don't see and you can't begin to move away then. The first question we'll do together, all of us, and just follow along the best that you can. Remember, you can't get it wrong. Can you find a separate person when you look for yourself? So right now, there's a sense of you listening to this, watching this. Can you find a someone, a person? Can you find this seeker of enlightenment? So we're looking, there's a body present in our experience. There might be thoughts going on, maybe emotions, sensations going on in the body, and sounds, your senses are picking up sounds like these words and stimuli. But can you find a someone, an object, a person, an entity with a defined boundary that is you? Can you find a someone when you look? So just kind of searching and scanning. Yep, there's a body. There might be thoughts, sensations. To whom do they belong? Is it a person? Is this I a someone, a seeker? Remembering again, the willingness to ask these questions is the most important thing. That asking this question is doing the work. And that we're not responsible for finding the answers, just the questions are challenging this idea. Because the person, the someone, feels very real until we actually look. Can you find a person? You might find sensations, maybe some contraction in the body, some tension. But is that enough evidence that there's a person here, a someone who is living inside your body? When you say my thoughts, my body, what is that referring to? And there is something that is aware of thoughts and the body. Is it a person, a separate being? Taking a moment to scan and search your being. What is this I? What is me? When you say me and my, is it a person? A distinct entity? Is it an object? Are you an object? Whatever answers come in response to this question, it's okay. Just allowing them. Just looking again. Can I find a person? This one that desperately wants to wake up to the truth. Can I find it, actually? If I don't look, it really seems to be here, the someone. If I do look, it's not so evident. Just taking a moment now to see what you can find. Is it a person? Is there actually a believer of thoughts? A seeker of awakening? Just the willingness to see this. The willingness to question, am I really actually a person, a someone? Is doing all the work here for us. Just the willingness. Self-inquiry is really about being willing to see. Checking one more time. And you can't do this too many times. It may seem pointless to the mind to keep looking for something that's not there. But it is the most important thing to keep proving I'm not a person. I'm not a someone. What is this me? My life, my work, my awakening, my karmic patterns, my resistance. Who is the me that says my? We will move on to question 2 now, and don't worry if you don't feel you have a conclusive answer to question 1. Maybe you feel something is changing inside just by asking with curiosity. That is the work. The answers are quite unimportant. Maybe this is a lot easier than we might have thought it is. So question 2, what do we find then when we look for ourselves? If we can't find a person, what do we find? Because you do exist and you are here, but not as a someone, not as an object. What is this I, this sense of I? What do you find then? Question 2. Is this I an object? Is it tangible or intangible? Can you pick it up, this I, and move it? Or is it more like something that you could wave your hand through, insubstantial? Mostly we've been taught that insubstantial is less real than substantial or tangible. What if it's the complete opposite that's true? What is this I? Some people feel that they experience a blank or no answer here to this question. And it's really just no phenomenal answer. When we ask, what do I find then when I look for myself? Question 2, no phenomenal answers come forth. I'm not thoughts or experiences or sensations. This one that is aware of thoughts, the one that knows the sensations in the body. What is that? Is it form or formless? You that's aware of form, tangible form like a body or subtle form like a thought. Are you subtle, gross, or completely insubstantial? Taking a moment to experience what you do find as yourself. Some names we've called it emptiness, empty of substance, empty of form, but full and rich of sentience, nothingness, consciousness, beingness. These are all names for who you really are. And who you really are has no name. There is some field, some infinite nothingness that we begin to notice. What am I really here? If I'm not a person, what do I find? And just getting used to this, experiencing it yourself. I'm not an object. I am that in which there seems to be no form at all, no tangibility. And again, you can't get this wrong. The willingness to ask this question is doing the work for us. Again, you might feel something shifting energetically with the willingness to look. That's what's important. Question 2 then, what do I find when I look for myself? And for me, when I first experienced my own formless nothingness, it wasn't very exciting at all. In fact, it was really quite dull and boring. It was shocking because it wasn't the person I thought I would find. But it didn't come with bliss. In fact, there was a little fear that came for me when I first saw this. And it took me a little while to be willing to look again and see it again. And that's very normal if you're experiencing that too. But just being willing, what is it that I am actually then? What is aware of the body, of thoughts, emotions, experiences? What is it that's using this body? I find it something very different, not a form at all. Something that has always been here, and yet perhaps only just noticed now. And as we notice it, we're beginning to prove to ourselves that we're not this seeker with all of its problems. And every time we look like this, we begin to get a little more distance from the mind. Not that the mind is bad, just less able here as this to believe anything. If we are not what we thought we were, can we be sure any of our problems still exist for us? Just looking one more time with question 2, what do I find then when I look for myself? And it's been called many names, the real you, divinity, presence, We've called it contextual field, the sense of this moment, you are this moment. God, it's got so many names, and yet it really doesn't have any name that can limit it. Pure consciousness before form. And then we'll move on to question 3. So question 3, we're going to check out, how am I recognizing this consciousness? Because we want to prove not only in question 1, we're not this separate being. Question 2, we find this no-thingness consciousness. Question 3, we want to prove that that's already where we're looking from, that it is recognizing itself. And for me, there was this idea, this assumption that I was using my body and mind to recognize consciousness. And this idea kept some fear in my system, because I thought, if I need my body and mind to recognize who I am, then when my body and mind go, I will be lost. I'll be unable to recognize myself. So we're going to split question 3 into 3 questions. The first one, am I using my senses to recognize consciousness? I'm just going to call it consciousness rather than using lots of different names, but you can call it whatever you like, this real self. Am I using my senses? Can I see consciousness with my eyes? Is it visible? Can I hear consciousness with my ears? Is it making a sound? Does consciousness have any smell or taste or texture? Just checking this out. Am I using my senses, my 5 senses, to recognize consciousness? I know it's here. I'm experiencing it, but how am I experiencing it? Am I using my senses? And when I looked like this, I realized that consciousness is invisible. I'm not seeing it with my physical eyes. It's inaudible too. I'm not hearing it with my ears. My eyes and ears and senses pick up vibration, and consciousness isn't a vibration. It's before even vibration. Moving on then. And again, if you feel you haven't got the right answer, let's just relax. There isn't a right answer here. There's only asking the questions together that is doing something really powerful. Am I using my mind to recognize consciousness? So we're going to ask, if I'm not using my senses, then am I using my mind to recognize consciousness? Well, what is mind? It's a thought process. When I experience the formless consciousness, am I thinking about it? Is it a thought about consciousness, or a seeing, experiencing, and knowing that is before thought? When I checked, how am I recognizing consciousness? There was some kind of direct seeing somehow, not with my eyes, but some knowing, seeing. I just know it's here. And it's not something I'm thinking about. When I ask this question, is consciousness present? There's a direct internal seeing that is before the mind. some recognition that is before thought. Later, our mind may say, may think about consciousness, but consciousness sees even the mind thinking. So as we work with this question, am I using my mind to recognize consciousness? It becomes clearer and clearer. No, consciousness is prior to mind. It's before. It's a direct seeing and knowing. And mind is later thinking about it. And so the last question of all then is kind of an open-ended question. So if I'm not using my senses or my mind, how am I recognizing consciousness? How do I know it's here? Just asking this question together. How do I know consciousness, awareness, presence is here? And you might find that you're tempted to just say, well, I just know somehow, I see it. But as we stay with this question, how am I recognizing consciousness then? With a deep curiosity, you might find something very powerful happening. And there may or may not be a recognition right now that it's seeing itself. Only consciousness, formlessness, can recognize formlessness. That only something infinite and unlimited can recognize the infinite unlimited. No phenomenon can recognize that in which all phenomena appear. The separate sense of self, we couldn't find that when we looked. It can't be that. The someone, it can't be the someone that's recognizing consciousness. Even if there was a person, it would just be one small object in the vast ocean of consciousness. Where would it stand as a person to recognize all of the consciousness? So just openly sitting with this question, how am I recognizing consciousness then? This question for me was very confusing. I didn't know the answer, but I really wanted to. And this burning desire came inside over time. I have to know. I have to know. And as I kept asking these questions, I found it became more and more obvious. There was no huge, exciting moment where everything was revealed. It didn't happen like that. It was just clearer every single time, a little bit clearer. I am consciousness, and it is recognizing itself. Only the intangible can recognize the intangible. So, just sitting with this question for a few minutes together. How am I recognizing consciousness then? Making no effort to find an answer. Answers will come on their own. Enjoying how it feels, if it feels open to just question like this. How do you know that consciousness is present? What faculty are you using to recognize it? As if this question was enough to help you see, just asking this question is enough. So we have just taken about half an hour to go through these questions. But as you practice this, you'll be able to do this in less than a minute each time. As you get more proficient, just asking the questions. So question 1, can I find a separate person? Question 2, what do I find then when I look for myself if it's not a person? And question 3, how am I recognizing consciousness? Am I looking with my senses or with my mind? And if not, how am I recognizing it? So I did this process again and again and again. And one day I got so excited because I could feel something shifting and changing. And I got obsessed with these questions for about, I don't know, 2 months or something. And one day I must have done this 100 times, but because it felt really, really good. It was a day that I wasn't busy. I was just at home, so I was asking these questions. And every time we ask these questions, we are a little bit closer to never being able to believe a thought again, or to see that we never did. So, relaxing as you ask the questions, knowing that the answers must come in their own time. And perhaps the most important answer you might already have experienced some sense of something shifting, some opening, or some energetic movement inside. That is the gift of asking questions, because as we ask questions, we can't be believing any thoughts in that moment, and our system opens up and truth can reveal itself to us. So just asking, is there actually a person, means we're not sustaining it in that moment, the sense of a someone. And just asking, what do I find then in experiencing who we really are? And then asking, how am I recognizing consciousness? We're proving that I'm not over here making this journey, getting closer. I'm already this that's free here. So these questions changed my whole life. And I know they will do the same for you. They put an end to suffering, to seeking and striving and efforting. And there was no big shift for me, not in the way that people expect. It wasn't like that. Every day I was just a little more peaceful, and it got bigger and bigger every day. More peace, more joy, less capacity to believe a thought. When an emotion arose inside, it just arose, and there was less and less of a someone that could do anything about it and push it away or suffer. At some point, these questions became a habit. They started to happen automatically. My mind even enjoyed asking these questions. And some momentum was building. And when I actually lost the capacity to suffer, I don't know when that was. It fell away at some point in that 2 month period. I think it was 2 months. I can't really remember. But it didn't really even matter when it fell away, because I was having so much fun asking these questions, proving again and again There's no one here to suffer. There's only consciousness, recognizing itself. So just one final reminder before we take a quick break. It's not about the answers of self-inquiry. It's about being willing to ask the questions. Even just asking once like this together is enough to ensure total freedom. The more that we ask them, though, from curiosity and fun, the more we're going to speed up. You ask them once, maybe it's a 6-month process. Ask them twice, maybe it goes to 5 months. Ask a few times, and this time is getting shorter to where our sense of separation falls away completely. Don't wait for a big moment. Just enjoy every day feeling a little more free, a little less triggered by things outside and things inside. A deepening sense of freedom that sneaks up on you quietly at first, and then profoundly. Okay, so let's take a break. We'll come back on the hour and I'll open it up here for any questions about what we've done here, any challenges. Uh, Again, please keep the questions to this topic. Thank you. So.